Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. Excuse me a moment while I get my notes up. How are you all feeling? I heard some of you, but I didn't hear many of you. How are you all feeling tonight? All right, that's better. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. What a fantastic event, an opportunity to connect in the community, to see resources in real life, and really just be here with peers. For me, this exemplifies the breaking down of stigmas. This is what it's all about here in the community. So thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chris. And to Heather Martinson, wherever you are, thank you as well for bringing me here. So I'm going to share a bit about my story, and I'm going to also share a little bit about the work that we do at No Stigmas and Five Bridges. First, I want to share some recent events with you. On Sunday, I did something that I have been attempting to do for about 20 years, and that is complete the Chicago Marathon.
All right.
Thank you. I will take every single one of those applause because that was very nearly the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. And I've always considered myself to be a fit person, and this took every ounce of everything I had to do. And like I said, it was 20 years coming. When I first moved to Chicago in my early 20s, I happened to be along the marathon route. And if you're familiar with Chicago, you know that it is a city made up of neighborhoods. There are 77 different neighborhoods in Chicago, and each is unique and different. And the marathon goes through about 30 of those neighborhoods. And as a new guy to Chicago from a very small Midwestern town just in Southwest Michigan, when I witnessed just the sheer spectacle that the marathon was, it was, I mean, it completely just blew me away. There are tens of thousands of people who run through the streets for 26.2 miles. Can you imagine that? But what's even more astounding is that 5 times that many people come out to cheer them on. The streets are lined with spectators who are there holding signs, cheering, shouting, giving words of encouragement and affirmation, handing out beers and shots of Fireball, of all things. And in some cases, just offering a box of tissues. And witnessing that was something that was so magnetic, it was so electrifying that I wanted to be part of it. And I was determined to sign up for the marathon the next year. But life and my mental health didn't really allow that to happen. And it's taken me nearly 20 years to finally complete that task. But before I get too much into that, I want to share a little bit about my story and what led me to not being able to sign up for or complete a marathon until now. It starts when I was 6 years old. My birth father, who had a lifelong battle with trauma, with addiction, with mental illness, died by suicide. And my young family didn't know what to do with that. My mom was just 20 years old when she had me. And my sister and my brother were younger than me. So when my father died, she was alone with 3 little kids. We were poor. We lived in a trailer park, and we didn't have resources. We didn't have knowledge. We didn't know what to do except for just survive. And we did. We did the best that we could. But there were a lot of challenges. His death, that trauma that I experienced, affected every single part of my life. It affected my relationships, my schooling, my self-perception. I, at a very young age, took on a lot of responsibility. I was the oldest kid. I was the oldest cousin. And I felt that it was necessary to become the little man of the house. And with that responsibility came a lot of pressure that I put on myself. But it was still pressure. My pressure turned to anxiety, which turned to panic attacks, which led to depression. And that followed me all throughout my childhood. But remember, I also had to be the little man. So I couldn't show that I was suffering inside. I had to put on a mask and pretend to still be strong. While inside, I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was breaking apart. And that conflict inside of me, feeling like I was being torn in two directions, led to a lot of behavioral challenges. I acted out. See, because when you experience trauma at a young age, when you experience a significant loss, it strips you of your power. And that's how I felt. I felt powerless. So I tried everything that I could to gain some of that power back, to gain a little bit of control. Only I did it through anger. I did it through acting out. I did it by getting into fights. I did it by stealing things. Anything that I could to gain a sense of control, a sense of power back in my life, I did. But the more I did those things, the further that it pushed me away from other people. The more isolated I became, because the things that I were doing were harmful to not only myself, but other people. Again, there was this duality. There was this sense of wanting to connect, wanting to be supported, wanting to be nurtured, but this feeling of trying to gain some sort of control in my life. That followed me. It affected my ability to learn in school. I was the kid who was dubbed the class clown, the one who acted out, the one who got put out in the hallway or got sent down to the principal's office. And because they told me that I was a bad kid, I started to believe it. That became my identity. And that followed me all through high school. In high school, I became so depressed that I no longer cared if I lived or died. And in my senior year of high school, I started actively seeking ways to end my life. I was very fortunate that my mother was there to recognize what was going on, to see the same signs that she saw after the fact from my father. And she took me to the doctor and helped me get the help that I needed. But what I didn't realize at the time was that there's no quick fix when it comes to mental health. You can't just take some pills and all your problems go away. It would be amazing if it were that simple. And so, that mask, I continued to wear it. I continued to pretend. I continued to do things that were self-serving, that pushed me away from other people. When I was in Chicago, I worked in the hospitality industry, and I loved it. It was so much fun. I got to stay up all night, got to hang out, drink with my friends, smoked cigarettes all day, and I thought that I had it all figured out. But what I didn't realize is I was still just doing things to mask the pain. I was still doing things to make myself feel better in small ways that really didn't fix the root of it, didn't fix the core of what I was experiencing. So when it came to signing up for the marathon, my lifestyle, what I was experiencing, did not really allow me to make that commitment, to do what I needed to do to actually train for and complete a marathon. And I became even more depressed during my 20s and had yet another bout of suicidal ideation. And I almost took my own life again at the age of 23. Only this time I was in Chicago and I was living as an adult, and I didn't have my mom there. I didn't have a community like I did back home. What I didn't realize at the time was that even though I wasn't going to run the Chicago Marathon, I was participating in another sort of marathon, a mental health marathon. And it's something that I see very clearly now, but at the time I fought against this idea that mental health is a lifelong process. Mental health is something that we live with. It is not something that we can ignore and pretend doesn't exist. It's not something that we can just tuck away in a drawer and forget about. Because if we don't, if we're not diligent about addressing our mental health, then what happens? It comes back. It comes back and it talks to us again. And those symptoms come back. And the behaviors come back. I was approaching mental health with quick fixes, temporary things to grasp some power, grasp some control, but I wasn't taking action that was lasting. I wasn't doing what was necessary to help myself have positive mental health for the long run. How many of you have had a similar experience in your life? How many of you have felt like you are just barely getting by? How many of you have felt like you don't really know how to help yourself or to help a loved one? I see hands, I see nods. I know that I'm not alone in this. And I want you to know that you're not alone in feeling like that either. So many of us experience things that we need to recover from. Trauma, mental illness, substance use, small things that maybe don't get categorized or treated that still affect us, that we still have to recover from. And thinking of that in terms of a marathon is really, it's kind of scary, right? It doesn't feel good to think about it like that, but I want to offer a different perspective. One of my coaches for running said, you're always either recovering from your last run or recovering for your next run. You're either recovering from your last run or recovering for your next run. If we're always stuck in a place where we are recovering from something, which direction are we looking? Backwards, right? And listen, when we're in active recovery, we are moving away from pain. That is a big motivator, right? That's oftentimes why we make the decision to recover, to move away from pain. But if we're constantly looking back there, at that pain, at that trauma, at those things, then where are we not looking? We're not looking forward. Now, what if we were recovering for something? What if we're recovering towards something? What would that look like? Maybe a goal? Maybe a relationship? Maybe a certain feeling? But if we're recovering for something, which direction are we looking? Forward, right? And I think that's a positive place to look. We want to look forward. We want to look towards the future. We want to look towards hope, towards something positive. But what if there's a third option? What if we can recover now? What if we can recover in the present? Can we have recovery here today? Of course, the past informs that recovery. And working towards something, having a goal to move towards is important as well. But what if we're present with that? Understanding that every day we take another step. Just like in a marathon, just like in a race, each day we work on something new. We work on a new training plan, or a new nutrition protocol, or a new way to rest, a new way to heal our body. When you run, if you're not present with your moment, if you're not present with your footfalls, with your stride, with your course, with your pace, where you're going, it's really difficult to run a long distance. Certainly not 26.2 miles. Because let me tell you, when you're on the starting line and you're surrounded by 40,000 people, it is electrifying, and all you want to do is go. You want to run with those guys who are setting world records and finishing the marathon in 2 hours and like 30 seconds. Which, by the way, the guy who won the marathon and set the world record this year in Chicago, he was finishing the marathon when I was not even halfway through. All right? But when you're there and you see these guys and you're so excited and you just want to go. But if you're not paying attention to your own journey, if you're not paying attention to your own plan, your own pace, if you're trying to run someone else's race, where are you going to end up? The thing is we can't run someone else's race. We can wish and we can hope that our path was different, that what we're recovering from didn't happen, or we can wish and hope that we are in that future that looks the way that we want it to look. But the reality is we can only be right here, right now, in our own shoes, where we are today. And the beautiful thing about that, when you recognize that, when you truly understand that, there is an incredible freedom that comes from that. When you can be right there, where you are supposed to be, right here, right now, it's a beautiful thing. In running, they call it the zone, right? You get into this zone where it almost feels like your brain is just floating. You don't even feel or know that your body's there. You're just there in the moment. And it's beautiful. It is the definition of mindfulness. What if we could bring that into our recovery journey? What if we could bring that presence of mind into the things that we're doing right now, today? How would that impact our ability to meet those goals in the future? I want you to all do something with me right now. I recognize that talking about things like mental illness and suicide and trauma can be activating. I know sometimes it is for me. So I want to show you just a really simple exercise that you can do anywhere, anytime, to bring you back to the present. If trying to be mindful and in the moment is a little daunting, then here's something really simple that you can do. If you feel comfortable, just close your eyes for a moment. And as you do, just bring awareness to the way that your body feels right now. Your mind's going to be thinking. There's going to be thoughts that are going through your mind right now. But just let those go. Let your mind do what it's going to do. Just focus on the way your body feels right now. Notice your breath going in and out. You don't need to change it. Just feel how it feels. And I want you to bring your attention to either your seat in the chair or your feet on the floor. Whichever one feels better for you. Just feel that sensation of the contact with your chair or with the floor. How are you sat? Are you sat evenly? Maybe off to one side? Do you feel pressure on one part of your body more than another? Just lock into how that feels, that connection. I want you to notice right now that when you are connecting to that feeling, you're not paying attention to the thoughts that are going through your head. You're not paying attention to whether or not you remembered to do that thing on your to-do list. You're not thinking about whether or not you're doing a good job or a bad job at a certain thing. You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're right here, connected to that feeling. You can open your eyes. This is a simple exercise that you can do anytime to bring yourself to the present, to connect. When you feel your mind spiraling towards the past or towards the future, and you need to center and find calm and remind yourself that you're here now, just remember that contact. Really simple way to connect. Why is that important? When we are in our thinking brain, when we're in our worrying brain, when we're in our what-if brain, we are living in a place that doesn't exist, except for in our minds. We're living in a place that's outside of where we are now. And if we're always wondering about the future or worried about the past or what we could or couldn't have done in that time, then how can we truly be here, present with the people that we want to connect with, focusing on the things that are important to us, working actively on the importance of this present moment? 18 months ago, we welcomed into the world my first son. His name is William, and it was one of the most significant things that ever has happened to me. And that's because of a couple of reasons. If you're a parent, then you know how life-changing it is to become a parent. But it's more significant for me because I never wanted to be a parent until a few years ago. You see, my father dying by suicide when I was 6 years old felt like an abandonment. It felt like this betrayal. Growing up, everyone always told me how much I looked like my father, how much I acted like him, how I had his build, how I had his energy. And I grew up thinking about how much I was like my father. And I grew up feeling inside broken, like I know he felt because that's what he wrote about. And I grew up feeling like I was destined to repeat the same things that he did because everything that I saw in front of me told me that that's what was going to happen. Because I was misbehaving, because I was getting in trouble, because I was experiencing anxiety and depression and substance use. That kid knows. There's a lot of pressure that comes with being in someone's shadow and feeling like you are going to become that. For me, that meant I did not think that I was going to make it past the age of 32, because that's when my father died. I spent most of my youth thinking that I was not going to live past the age of 32. That's how I was able to justify all of the misbehaving I did, because I didn't think it mattered. Because I thought that I was going to end up dying the same way that he did. And it wasn't until I made it past that birthday that I realized that I was still alive. I woke up and I was like, I made it. I didn't plan for this. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? I didn't expect to live this long. And here I am. And let me tell you, I had to do some quick thinking to figure it out. But that did not include parenthood. In my 30s, I did what a lot of people do in their teens and their 20s, which was explore, experiment. I got a dozen different jobs. I traveled. I looked for ways to really understand my purpose. And in that process, I was very fortunate to meet a mentor, someone who had also lost a parent to suicide. And that meeting of someone who had had similar experiences but had gone on to have a successful life meant everything to me. Seeing that real-world example gave me a sense of hope that if they could do it, then I could do it too. And it was incredibly powerful for me to see that real-world example of someone who is able to conquer, to go on and to thrive. So I started investing in my own health. I started investigating ways to help myself grow beyond just surviving, and peer support became a big part of that. That was the basis for No Stigmas, this idea that if we share our experiences, if we share our stories, if we share our pain, then as my friend Kevin Hines says, pain shared is pain halved. When we share that with other people, we don't have to keep all of that to ourselves and inside. And that community led to more opportunities for me to invest in my own health and wellness. And just like training for a marathon, one step, one run, one race builds your endurance, builds your resilience, so that you're able to continue on to the next one and the next one. So, 18 months ago, my son is born. And I realize, all of a sudden, as if this is news, that I'm in my 40s. And when my son is 20, I'm gonna be in my 60s. And oh my gosh, he started literally running at 9 months. If I want to keep up with this kid, I had better get myself together. So I had suddenly a renewed interest in endurance and longevity. And I signed up for the Chicago Marathon. Well, you clap, but it was spontaneous, and I did not realize everything that went into it, ladies and gentlemen. I did not realize until I started doing it how incredibly tough it would be. The time and the resources, because it's not just running. Running is part of it, but you gotta prepare to run. You gotta have plans. You gotta have strategies. You gotta eat everything. I have never had such a relationship with carbohydrates, people. I was always a protein kind of guy, and all of a sudden I'm like, give me spaghetti, give me bread. I'm like, I understand why people like carbs now. And then the recovery process from running it's intense. If you don't do it strategically, like your body like literally eats itself. Like it breaks down muscles to use for energy. It's wild what your body does when it thinks that it is in starvation mode. So that's all just to say that at the beginning of 2023, I could not run more than 3 miles continuously. And I just ran 26.2 miles on Sunday. That is mind-boggling to me what the body can do. In 9 months, I went from not a runner to being I can call myself a runner now. That is pretty cool. Think about that in terms of our mental health recovery. Think about that in terms of what our body can do to overcome addiction, to overcome trauma. What if we went into that process, those processes, and I put them all together, and I say recovery because whatever your diagnosis is, whatever your history is, whatever it is you're recovering from, they tend to all go together, right? They tend to co-occur. They tend to be connected. So whatever it is we're recovering from, if we have a strategy for that, if we have an approach to that that is specific to us, to our abilities, to our needs, to our goals, the possibilities are limitless. Listen, if I can become a runner, an endurance athlete, imagine, what can we do? What can we do if we take that same dedication? Now, like I talked about earlier, when we're recovering from something, generally it is moving away from pain, right? That's usually, we're experiencing pain from what it is that we're suffering from. And it's very motivating to move away from that pain, right? You touch a hot stove, what do? You move your hand away, right? So we're experiencing pain that we need to recover from, and that's very motivating. But that only gets us so far. That only brings us so far. That's where the idea of recovering for something can help us take those next steps, right? If we have a goal, if we have a relationship, if we have a vision, that's very motivating. For me, my son, being an active, engaged father as he grows up, is very motivating for me. So that goal gives me something to move towards. But we still have to do the work in the present. And the way we do that is by having a plan, an individualized, customized plan that is self-directed. Self-directed, meaning that we are in charge of it. Our therapists, our doctors can help us with that, but ultimately, we need to have ownership of that. It's our plan. Just like my 32-week marathon training program, I had to customize for me, customize for the work that I do, for being a new father, for the way that my body works. The same thing applies to when we are customizing a plan for our own wellness. I want to share a little bit about 5 Bridges and why I created it. So 5 Bridges is really just a simple way of giving us some structure, a way to approach our wellness. The first bridge is bond. Bond is the way that we connect to the people, places, and things that give us some type of support. Our sources of strength. So if you think about the way that you connect, the quality of the connections that you have to your sources of strength, could you possibly maybe improve some of them? Are there some areas where maybe you're not getting the kind of support that you need or the quality of support that you want? That's what Bond is all about, is helping us recognize what those sources of strength are, where there might be some gaps, and how to strategically create the type of safety net that we need. The second bridge is fuel. Fuel is anything and everything that goes into your system. So of course that includes your food and your drinks and your supplements, but we also look at the conversations that we have, the media that we consume, the things that we read. All of that is fuel for our systems. Anything that comes in through any of our 5 senses is a form of fuel. And just like the fuel that goes into your fossil fuel vehicles, you have low grade and premium. And your body is different than everybody else's body. So the types of fuel and the qualities of those fuel has to be customized for you. And 5 Bridges teaches you how to customize those fuel sources to best fit your own needs. The third bridge is move. Move is the kinesthetic energy in your body. So of course that includes things like exercise and mobility, stretching, things like that. But we also look at all of the movement that happens inside of our bodies all the time. The things that happen autonomously or automatically in our body or semi-autonomously, and the things that we can control. So think about the bodily systems. What are some of the systems that are operating in your body right now? You can shout it out if you know. Your circulation, digestion,
breathing.
Yep, your respiration. And then we have the electrical circuitry of our body, right? So all of those movements are happening inside of our bodies all the time. So it's not just what we can control or directly impact, it's the things that are also happening automatically in our bodies all the time. So all of that movement is connected, right? Because what I fuel my body with determines what happens in my digestion. That controls the type of energy that I have, right? Maybe you're someone who can't tolerate dairy very well. That fuel source might not be positive for you. That affects the movement that happens inside of your body. The fourth bridge is rest. Naturally, after moving, we come to a place of rest. Rest includes our sleep hygiene. That's important. And we work on things like, creating a shutdown sequence so that we can get the rest that we need at night. But we also look at ways that our body can rest and recover throughout the day. Ways that we can take those mindful moments of connection, like I showed you earlier. We look at longer forms of rest, maybe retreat or something that's more restorative. But understanding what your needs are when it comes to the rest that you require. And then the fifth and final bridge is give. Give is our positive output. That's how we connect to others. That's how we take our experiences. That's how we take the energy that we've created and we feed it back into the world. And in this way, when we are putting that energy back into the world, we are creating a self-sustaining feedback loop. Because when we give, we're creating a bridge to someone else's bond. And in that way, 5 Bridges becomes a cycle. And if you imagine many people in a community practicing using a system like 5 Bridges that are all customized for them as individuals, everyone's needs are met and everyone is helping to support others. It might be utopian, but here's the cool thing. Prince William County actually has access to 5 Bridges. So through the prevention department, through mental health services, 5 Bridges is available. And it's available online for any of you that are interested in checking it out. Why I'm telling you about 5 Bridges is because it is an example of a way that you can customize a plan that works for you, a strategy that works for your own needs, for your own wellness, for your own health. And that's what's important, is finding something that works for you. Whether or not it's 5 Bridges is less important. That you find something that works for you and you participate in the creation of a plan for yourself. There's no way I would be here today if I did not have the type of support necessary to not only survive, but to be able to thrive. There's no way that I could have possibly run a marathon if I didn't have the types of support like a strategy or a plan like that requires. So if you hear nothing else today, I want to encourage you to go forward and really invest in first understanding what your needs are, understanding what you are recovering from, what your goals are, what you're moving towards, what you're recovering for. And then how are you going to practice that every day? How are you going to take those steps? How are you going to follow that plan to get you to the place that you want to go? One last thing that I want to share with you. When I was running the marathon on Sunday, I, at that point, had run no more than 20 miles. 20 miles was the longest that you generally run in a training program working up to a marathon. So anyone who's running a marathon, unless you've previously run a marathon, basically, if it's your first time, you are on blind faith running longer than you've ever run before. Okay, so Sunday morning I woke up and I was like, I'm going to run 26 miles. I've never run 26 miles. I don't know for sure if I can run 26 miles, but coaches and training partners and people tell me that I should be able to at this point. So I'm going to go out there, I'm going to line up, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to have faith that I'm going to be able to run 26 miles. And I got to about mile 18, and I was like, I can't run 26 miles. This is not going to happen. And as if by some design, I go around a corner, and my wife is there with our 18-month-old son. It was a complete surprise. I did not know that they were going to be there. And at the moment when I felt like I could not go a step further, I see them there, and it gives me so much life and so much hope. And I'm running, and I'm crying, and I'm hyperventilating. I got snot running down my nose, and it's like the happiest moment of my life that I will never, ever forget. It was so incredible. Because what I realized is that not only did I live longer than I thought I would, not only did I not think I was going to become a father because I was afraid of repeating history, but because I had a plan and I was following it, I actually had achieved the goal of having everything that I ever wanted in my life, and I never knew that I wanted. And it was there, and I was running this race, and I was seeing them, and it was like a lightning strike to my brain, and I was like, this is what the work is for. This is why we do what we're doing. This is why we have a marathon mindset with recovery, because we never know when we're going to turn a corner, and that's going to be the moment that we've been waiting for. That's the moment that we've been hoping we were going to have our whole lives. So if you have any doubt that there is a brighter future, if you have any doubt as to whether or not you need to be here, and whether or not you need to keep moving forward, please believe it. And if you can't believe that today, that's okay, because I believe it for you, and there are people here who will believe it for you as well. Keep moving forward. Keep running, because everything that you want is out there for you. Thank you.